So I'm going to quickly talk about macro photography. Macro photography is basically taking photos of anything very, very close. Now, quite often you can't get all the way up to your object, because obviously if you see where my hand is, you start to create a shadow over the object. So with a camera this size, when you get too close, you're going to ruin the light and half of your object's going to be in shadow. But the great thing about this is that it will crop. So I took a picture, which I'm sure quite a few have seen, I'll put it on here, of a spider. Now the spider was actually in the centre of that frame. It wasn't as big as the whole frame, and I just cropped the image, but the detail was so amazing that you could see all the hairs on his legs and all the pattern and everything. It came out really well, and he didn't have to be in the full frame. But if you can get as close as possible, then you get as much detail as possible. So here I've got some coins. I've got this little bunny thing. I've got a lip gloss balm thing, and I've got a little butterfly thing. And I just wanted to show you how these different objects can come out with macro photography. Now the important thing to do, it doesn't matter what setting you're on, when you're on there, press your manual focus button, this one here, and make sure that you're set to macro. So you're not on automatic and you're not on manual, you're on macro, which is the flower, because that is going to pick up as much detail as it can. If you can use manual setting, then obviously that's better, because you have a lot more control and you can help your picture out a little bit if you're struggling with the light. The thing with macro photography, as I said, you get up very close. If you're setting it up yourself, try and get really good light where you're taking the picture, because then you'll pick up a lot more detail. So I've just got a lamp set up to the right here, and as you can see, my picture at the moment is quite dark. The first thing I'm going to do is just take a picture of a 50p. Now I don't know how well you'll see this, you should be able to see it quite well. One of the most important things when you're using macro photography, do not zoom out your lens. The lens cannot do macro photography if it's zoomed out at all. It needs to be zoomed all the way in, all the way back to do macro photography. So what we do is we get our camera as physically close to it as possible. If you see here, if I take it from this angle, you can see better. So I'm leaning on the table for support, but I'm actually very close to this, and you can see the shadows starting to move, so I can't get right on top because that shadow is just going to ruin the picture. So I'm at a bit of an angle and I'm going to take a photo. Now you can see the photo here. If we zoom in, the detail is absolutely wonderful. I mean, look at that, that's off of a 50p piece. And you can see all these scratches and you can see all the scratches and all the dents, and you get some really, really amazing detail. So I'm just going to show you it with a couple more bits. So we've got a much smaller item here. If you look at the comparison in size, this is going to be a lot smaller. So I'll do it again at the side so you can see how close I'm getting. As I'm coming in closer to this object, I'm constantly pressing this button halfway down, the shutter release. And what that does is it just lets me carry on focusing until I get close enough. Now obviously, as you can see, the shadow of the lens is becoming too much. I'm going to move the light, but I don't really think it's going to help because there's still a lot of shadow coming from the lens. So if you can see my settings, I'm just going to make it a bit brighter. I'm going to try my best. The focus is based on the centre of the image, so I can't sort of place it up the top and avoid the light. It needs to be nearer to the middle. So that's come out pretty well. I mean, if you look at the detail that's come out there, that's it zoomed in, that's it zoomed out, but like I say, the quality remains all the way in, and that's what's wonderful, is that as long as the centre of the image, the main thing, is in focus with that detail, it doesn't matter if it doesn't fill the whole frame, because you can crop it and still get a really good macro. The last thing I'm going to do, I changed my mind on the bunny, is I've got this Tigger bookmark that's stitched, and I just want to take a picture of the actual stitches. The great thing about this is as they're raised and bumped, that light's going to cause them to stand out a lot more, so this is why it's good to be able to control your light. You can see, excuse my desk mess, I've sort of hung it up right underneath the light, so I shouldn't be affecting the light as much now. As you can see, I can get really close to that now because I'm not affecting the light. I actually bumped it there. I don't know if you can't really see. If I try and do it from here, hopefully you can see how close I'm going to it. So I'm just upping my shutter speed just so that I can get some really good light into the picture. And I'm underneath the light, but sometimes because it's going into shadow, you need to just bump up that light a bit so that you get rid of that little bit of shadow that starts to come along. So you can really see the threads and the stitching there. So the important things, lens must be zoomed out. You must have your macro focus set. The best lighting you can. Obviously if you're shooting in daylight you'll probably be surrounded by light, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about shadow. Like there's some pictures of oranges and things that I took, and they were done in daylight, so my shadow was only really an issue if I was right pressing against the object. Let's see if I can get a better picture of that. Don't know if you can see that, but I was basically leaning onto that pot. The detail you get is absolutely wonderful. So I hope that sort of clears up the best way to approach macro photography. The camera does pretty much all of it for you. Your job is just to make sure that you're not causing shadow by placing your object in unnecessary areas, and just making sure that you've got your macro focus set and you'll zoom in. Other than that, it's just a case of finding things that are very cool and very small, and having a bash at taking the pictures. And it would be really great to see what people get out of that.